Hi everyone, my name is Stephanie Fair and I am one of the Adult Services Librarians for the City of Sterling Heights Public Library. Today we're going to talk to you about resumes. This is a two-part series workshop, this being part one, and I have a lot to talk to you about today to get you in preparation for part two. So let's go ahead and get started. Today's topics are going to discuss what a resume is, suggested resume categories that you should have on your resume, some do's and don'ts. The do's and don'ts I have come to find through the search committees that I've led on. There are a few do's and don'ts that really stand out when you're writing that resume and preparing it for an employer. And then how to write some effective accomplishment statements will be discussed as well. Now, with this series, these are just my opinions through working with search committees, and there are a vast majority of opinions that are out there, so you can see some different suggestions online, and that's fine. You've probably seen different suggestions if you talk to someone else who does resumes. But these are, like I said, just my opinions, some things I've come across in search committees, and I wanted to share them today with you. So what exactly is a resume? I'm sure you probably already know this, but some tips on what a resume is obviously it represents yourself to potential employers. You usually want to fill at least 1 to 2 pages long and not go over that unless you're applying for an academic position or a medical position, or it really tailors into the type of profession that you are going into. So for example, with myself within libraries, and I applied to academic libraries, I have more of a curriculum vitae, and that differs from a resume, as it's usually 3, 4, 5 pages long. And just remember that with this resume, it's the first representation of yourself. Usually an employer spends about 45 seconds initially scanning a resume, and they can tell from that whether or not they're putting you in the yes, possible, or no profile. So that's one thing to consider, that you definitely want to make sure your layout is appealing. And we'll be discussing that a little bit later in this series, and especially in the second workshop. So there are a variety of suggested resume categories. You could have headings, objective versus branding, education, skills, experience, and some may include activities, honors, and professional memberships. So what exactly is a heading, and what should you include in your heading? So your heading has identifying information right at the top of the resume. It should include your name, complete address, your email address, and your telephone. Please make sure that your email address is professional. I have found that sometimes people use unprofessional emails within their resume, and it's just kind of a turnoff for those. And you can see here in the example of the heading what is going on. Next, we have objective versus branding. So they're both optional, but used pretty often in resumes. Objective and career summaries, again optional, are used for clarifying purposes for career changes, and usually consist of 1 to 2 lines in length. It sometimes can include the type of position sought, the industrial area, and your personal qualifications. This is definitely good if you're looking to summarize your career goals and work experiences. Remember though, 1 to 2 lines in length. For branding, as you can see the example below, it is also optional and is more of a modern approach towards resumes. It uses the focus to sharpen the resume and present qualifications in a promotional style of keyword choices and paraphrasing. So as you can see in the example below, this person used keyword choices to highlight some of their qualifications. Next would be your education. So with your education, an outline of the information is always done in reverse chronological order. That meaning most recent educational experiences are listed first. Included should be the name of the school, location, including the city and state, your major, and the dates you attended the school. Also include your graduation date or expected date, the type of degree that you have, certificate and or diploma received. Once you are in college, you do not need to include your high school education. Include your grade point average if you choose to do so on your resume, only if it is higher than 3.0. Next would be your skills. Including computer, software, and hardware skills are definitely important. For your computer skills, it is essential on a resume. You should always at least have your computer skills listed. List the programs individually instead of as a package. So for example, you're going to want it to say Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Access instead of Microsoft Office. I have found that when people applying for positions have placed Microsoft Office, they don't necessarily have some of the skills in the other individualized package. So it's really important to make sure that you list the ones that you do have instead of saying Microsoft Office when maybe, for example, you don't have any skills in Access or Excel. Any knowledge of foreign languages should be listed and broken down by level, and you can do that by oral and written skills, and they should be mentioned separately for each language that you know. And then any business-related skills can be included as well. Your work history should be listed in reverse chronological order, starting with your most recent experience first. So what should you include in this? Each experience should include the position, title, name of the employer, location, again city and state, dates of employment that at least include the month and the year. You definitely don't need to include the exact day, and a description of short action statements describing your duties. Make sure you're specific in your descriptions. Describe the details of projects, reporting, relationships, and what you did. And if you're a recent graduate, you should be able to describe participation in professional situations with appropriate descriptions such as summer work, internship, freelance, and obviously your part-time work. When you're describing a current job, action statements should be in the present tense, while past positions should be described in the past tense. These descriptions are usually incomplete sentences that are bulleted to make them easy to read and always start with an action verb to provide an immediate idea of the types of skills being used. Now with the action verbs, you can definitely do a quick Google search and they will pull up a variety of action verbs that you're able to use and be able to fit in appropriately. An example could be recruited and trained 5 new employees. Definitely make sure you qualify and quantify your accomplishments whenever possible. Activities, honors, and professional memberships can be combined or even listed separately. Items in this can be included in one line. If they're all connected to your current institution, you do not need to list it within the activity if you have already done so in your current profession. One example of this would be professional memberships, especially working in the library. The way I would list that would be I'm a member of American Libraries Association and the date of which I started the membership. I was also a member of the Virginia Library Association. I'm currently a member of the Michigan Library Association. So those would all be professional memberships that I would be able to list as they are relevant to my position. So here are some major do's and don'ts of writing your resume. You need to proofread your resume. And once you proofread it, you have 3 other people proofread it. Spell check cannot be relied upon, and an error-free resume is essential. I still to this day can remember one person's completely messed up resume that somehow made it through to the first round of our interviews. And the first thing she said to us was, "Thank you for still taking my interview, even though my resume was all messed up." Now, granted, her skills must have placed her higher up in there, but know that some places may just say that a proofread resume that has errors in it will just be tossed to the side. Verb tense should be in present tense for any work or activity you are currently performing, and in past tense for anything that you have completed. Make sure to do this. This is one thing that I always have to read and proofread my resume or anything that I'm doing over because I have a tendency to flip those. Listing dates should always include the year, and if you desire the month, but they do not have to include the actual day. Make sure when you are writing your dates that they are in the same format throughout the whole resume. Also, keep your resume at 1 to 2 pages in length in order to describe your key highlights and accomplishments to show that you're qualified. Now, some don'ts. Your age, marital status, height, weight, religion, all of those do not need to be listed and should never be included in a resume. The personal information they needed, like we've talked about earlier, is your name, address, phone, and email. Normally, your hobbies or interests would not be put into your resume unless it closely relates to the field and you have some space in your resume. I would never put that at the end of a resume if it's just going to bring it to your second page when you have a nice looking first page and one-page resume. However, let's say, for example, you are applying for Joann's or Michael's and you have a lot of personal hobbies that you do that relate to that. I would definitely try to find a spot in there. Scrapbooking, card making, those are things that I would assume would help you get a position at one of those locations or somewhere similar. Salary information should not be included on a resume. And usually if an employer requests a salary history or salary requirements, that could be done in your cover letter or even through your job application. Abbreviations other than GPA should not be used on a resume. Acronyms may be used if the title is written first. So for example, if I said Wayne State University and then in parentheses I put WSU, then I could continue to use WSU as I spoke about Wayne State. However, saying that, parentheses should be avoided elsewise. If the information is important enough to have on your resume, it does not need to be in a parenthesis. So what are some tips for writing effective accomplishment statements? So accomplishments are things you completed, you worked on, created, developed, or made possible. Things that happen because you were there. They don't have to be just because you created and did everything, but they could be part of something you played an active role in. But they should make sure that they're listed and very specific. They can also be included as part of your career summary, job descriptions, or descriptions of relevant skills and experiences. So what I would say to you is ask yourself some of the following. Did you invent or improve something? Did you save the company money or reduce costs? Did you increase sales? Designed a new process, program, or product? Demonstrated outstanding leadership skills? Completed something on time or ahead of schedule? So those are just a few questions that you can ask yourself while trying to write some of these job descriptions. Now that's the first part of the workshop series. So what will you do here before we go to part 2? What I'm asking you to do before you come to part 2 is that you actually work on updating those things with everything that you just learned through the workshop. Work on your job descriptions, work on your action verbs, try to get it really written to where you're a little bit happier with what you have on your resume. In part 2, we're actually going to discuss resume format, different types of resumes, resume templates, and databases and websites that are there to help you even proofread your resume for free. So there are many resources that are available to you that you do not need to pay someone for. And I think that's really important that you know that these resources are available through the library and outside of the library. So again, that was part 1. Part 2 is in front of you. We'll come back in about a week for part 2. Like I said, just try to work through part 1, take the suggestions I've given you, maybe do a little bit of your own research on it, and get your resume writing just down. Well, then you can come back to part 2 and put it into a template and get it ready to go. I thank you. Again, my name is Stephanie. You will see a link either in the comments below in the Facebook post or in the actual post itself. And it's just a little quick survey that I will actually send out the templates after the second workshop. And then that way you will have these templates to be able to use and determine which one you'd like to use for your resume. And I hope that you enjoyed this. I know it's a lot of talking, a lot of information, but I'm looking forward to seeing how your resumes turn out. And again, I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this. And if you should have any questions in that link, just jot something down. You may want to wait until the second one's done, and you can ask some more questions, and I'd be happy to try to answer them or lead you to the right resource for it. Again, thank you, and I hope you enjoyed yourself, and I look forward to talking to you in part 2.